And there we are. We are live on the pre-show for today's SY0-601 Security Plus Study Group. I'm just sort of getting things together here. Let's put on our stream health. Hello, chat room. Let's pop out the chat. Pop it out. There we go. We'll put the chat over there. We'll put the rest of this over here. Well, that worked out perfectly. I love it. Okay. Let's check our status of things. We've got streaming is good. Numbers look good. It's hard for me to see the numbers from where I am. Let's see if we can move some things around here. Numbers look super good. What else we got? We got recordings are good. Hey, chat room. Hey, downtown Houston. Panama City, Florida. We dodged one, didn't we? Hello, New York City and Ohio. UK and Woodbridge, Virginia. Las Vegas is here. Good to see everyone. Oh, we got a lot going on. Ohio and Minnesota is here, and Virginia Beach and Portugal, and more Minnesota, and more Las Vegas. A lot of people checking in. Hey, Washington, D.C. Hey, Jacksonville. A little wet for you today. I'm surprised you're up and running. That's fantastic. I guess it's not quite there, is it? I guess it's still working its way. It's a slow-moving storm, isn't it? All right, let's see if I got everything ready on my side. Let me check my recordings are running. This is super bright, so we need to change. We need to change brightnesses. We need to change desktops. Let's change the desktop. Boom, desktop is changed. Let's change some brightness on this display. Let's change that display and make it so it's not so bright. My eyes, my very sensitive eyes. All right, we're in good shape there. We're going to need a clock. We are going to need to get a clock in here. Let's get a nightstand so I can keep track of what's going on. Ooh, got a lot happening. There's a lot going on in a very short period of time here. Let's close this out. I think we might be ready. I think we're in good shape. We got about 4.5 minutes to go. So I just made it. Just made it. Hello, Toronto and Ireland and California. Lots of California. We got San Antonio, Texas and San Jose, California. Spent a lot of time on Tasman Drive, I got to tell you. Should have spent more time downtown. It's more fun. Hello, India is here. And more Minnesota. What is it? What's the deal with Minnesota today? Everybody's checking in. Thanks. How's the weather in Florida? It's been beautiful here. Nice, cool weather. Beautiful blue sky. Where I am, Florida's a big place. I got no rain from the hurricane. That's how big Florida is. Okay. Oh, that's nice. A little coffee. I think we're in pretty good shape. I think we are in really good shape. And now it's going to be a hurricane again and go to South Carolina. It's not done with its path of destruction. The television loves that. There'll be plenty more graphics, plenty more talking heads for us. All right, recording down here. Looks good here. I think I fixed my aux problem I had yesterday, which is you don't see, but I see, and it's a thing. So we'll get going there. All new questions. I'm hoping this is the right presentation. That would be nice if it was. We got the right dates at the end. We do. Everything looks pretty good. I like it. We got a lot. We got a lot going on. 3 minutes to go. This is not the actual study group. You've tuned in. You're looking at the back of my head and wondering, this is the worst stream ever. You're correct. It sort of is at this point, but we're just getting started. This is the pre-show. We will get an actual Q&A going in just a moment. We appreciate you being here, and we appreciate your patience. It's me making sure everything works, which is that's the best case scenario. That's not the normal scenario always, but that's the best case. That's what we're shooting for. That's what we would love to have happen. Let's do a keynote presentation. Let's get a green light. I love it. I love it. That all looks good. Very nice. Let's check our graphics and make sure they look okay. That is the right one. That is the right one. So we're in great shape. We are in fantastic shape. We're ready for live stream, everybody. It's super good. I can really see a lot there on the streamer. I need to change where some things are located. I'm always tweaking the tweaking things here, trying to make things a little bit less, a little bit more automated, a little bit more, a little more action, a little more activity. I can click one thing and have a lot of things happen. That's what I'd like to have happen. We'll see. We're in really good shape, though. We've got just a couple of minutes, a minute and a half or so ready until we get going. Let's see if I can get my clock up there. There we go. So at least I can watch some of this happening. All Security Plus today, all the time. And there you go. My connection was lost. What happened there? Something's going on. Well, I wonder what network I'm on. I probably should have looked at that. Probably should have looked at all those things. All right. And look, before we even got started, Brandon in the chat room with the $9.99 super chat. Brandon says, I passed the 008 Network Plus, Security Plus, and A Plus. Couldn't do it without you and your videos. Will definitely continue to come back to support the channel. Thank you, Brandon. First, congratulations on that. All three of those are difficult exams. The 601, which we're doing today, is probably it's a huge exam. So just passing that one is pretty awesome. You got all three in the pocket, so you're in great shape. Congratulations on that. I think I love getting news like that. So thank you for putting that into the chat, and thank you for the super chat, the $9.99 super chat. Every little bit helps keeps this crazy experiment going. So we sure appreciate that as well. It is top of the hour. Boom, just like that, everybody. We can do a live stream. It's time to begin. Why don't we? Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the September 2022 Professor Messer SY0-601 Security Plus Study Group. I should probably try to shorten the title just a little bit. Welcome to the study group, everyone. Except then we wouldn't know it's Security Plus, and then we wouldn't know which version. I'm James Messer. I will be your host for this next hour of Q&A, where I will ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and hopefully you'll be able to answer those. We're all going to answer them online. It's a very nice system that we've got set up and ready to go. The way that you can participate if you are here live is you can pop open a new browser window, and then you can open up that URL, professormesser.com/QA. That will get you to the question and answers. In fact, there'll be a question there waiting for you if you do everything right. There's also questions or an app you can use to answer the questions. You can go to Professor Messer or go to your favorite app store and download the Socrative Student app. That is the app you would like to be able to grab this, the Socrative Student app. You don't want the teacher app. That's the one for me. But if you use the app, it will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. Make sure you spell it right, or you won't be in the right room. There won't be anything waiting for you. If you do all of that, and you are at a point where you're able to see a question, you'll see a question that says, an attacker has captured all traffic from a switch without using a tap or an on-path technique. Which of the following would allow the attacker access to this data? Would it be wireless jamming, blue snarfing, denial of service, MAC flooding, or malicious script? 5 options there. Now, if you think you know the answer, our standing rule is we don't answer in the chat room. We do not answer in or even put hints into the chat room. Instead, we go to the link that's here on your screen. If you know the answer, you'd like to answer this, or you'd like to take a guess, go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can answer that particular question. There's a lot. We'll come back to that question in just a moment because there's a lot going on with that question and a couple things that have to happen. Hopefully you can remember that one from last month. Well, thank you for being here. We do one of these study groups every month. And of course, you have an archive of these that you can go back and listen to. But when we're not here, we're, of course, doing other things. If you'd like to watch my entire Security Plus course, it's available on YouTube. You don't have to register. There's nothing held back behind a paywall. It's just all out there. You can go to professormesser.com/YouTube to see all of my playlists, There's also a weekly Security Plus pop quiz question. You can see that on my Twitter feed at ProfessorMesser.com/Twitter or my Instagram feed at ProfessorMesser.com/Instagram. I also put it on LinkedIn as well. If you go to our LinkedIn page at ProfessorMesser.com/LinkedIn, just type in ProfessorMesser.com/ the thing that you would like to see, and you will easily find us there. We'd love it if you would subscribe to one of those to keep track of what we're doing. Today, we're going to talk all about Security Plus. The current Security Plus exam is the SY0-601. That's the version of the exam. This is an exam that was released on November the 12th of 2020, and we expect that it will be retired in May of 2024. That means there will probably be another one out in 2023, I would imagine. We should expect that shortly, be able to see that exam coming. We'll have to see how all of that works out. But if you're here in September 2022, you got plenty of time before anything like that even remotely begins to happen. So we're in great shape for your studies as we sit here today. It's a single exam. It's 90 minutes long. You get a maximum of 90 questions. You could get fewer than 90 questions. The passing score is on a scale from 100 to 900, and you have to make a 750. I know it's sort of a weird numbering scheme they use. The important part is that you have no control over the score. Each question's worth a different number of points, so you can't estimate how many questions you would need to pass. Just do the best you can. Don't worry about the grading of the system. They aren't going to tell you anyway, so there's nothing you can do about that. Just do the best you can, and hopefully it turns out to be 750 or more than that. The exam itself is a series of multiple choice questions and performance-based questions. We'll talk about both of those today and see what the difference is and indeed what the similarities might be between them. Of course, all of my videos are available online, but I recognize that there are folks that would like an offline version of the videos or a downloadable version of the videos. You can find those in my Success Bundle, which not only is my videos, it's also some audio, it's my course notes, it's my practice exams, it's my exam hacks ebook. We're going to put some other things in there as well. If you're a Success Bundle owner, then you already know just everything is in there. You're in really good shape. So if you'd like to find out more information on that, you can visit ProfessorMesser.com/601SB for more details. We, of course, will make a replay of this available immediately after on YouTube. It's just done automatically when I hit the stop button. It takes a couple of minutes to process, and then it's one you can watch right away. I also create an audio-only podcast distributed version of this live stream. You can, of course, see that at ProfessorMesser.com/podcast, and you can add it to your favorite podcast listening program so that the instant I put it online, it automatically downloads to your mobile device, and it's always there with you whenever you would like to listen to it. So pretty useful to have that. You can find it at ProfessorMesser.com/podcast. About a day after we're done here, my marketing manager, Lori, will go through this entire replay. Hi, Lori. She's watching the replay, probably at 2x speed, and running through everything and putting all the timestamps right here on the YouTube video description. So if you go over to YouTube and you look at the description, a lot of people don't even know it's there. Click that button to view more information, and you'll find a wealth of details here. If you're looking for a specific piece of information, you may be able to find it in those timestamps. When we're not here live and on the stream, you can, of course, find us on our Discord. That's our chat. There's not just me, but many other people in this fantastic community for doing A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, or anything else. They're more than happy to discuss and answer some of the questions you might have. You can, of course, go there and figure out what things you might want to learn from the Discord. There's a lot that you can do there. So have a look at some of the other options that you have available. There's plenty to look through. That's something you might be able to work through as well. We've also got, of course, at some point, you're going to need to take the Security Plus exam. The Security Plus exam is one that requires you to have a voucher to sign up for this. And there are discounted vouchers, of course, available on my website. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need some additional extension for your browser. They're just already discounted. And you can find them at ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. These vouchers are good for the U.S. and Canada. They're not available, unfortunately, for other countries at the moment, but we're working on that. Maybe we'll be able to make that happen. One thing that is different with my vouchers than vouchers you might get on another site is you get more than just a voucher. You also get a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook where I put together every tip and trick I can think of for the study process, for the test-taking process, and then even things you can do after the exam, something that might be able to get you a few extra points on the exam. That's something you won't find anywhere else, and it's only available with my vouchers and with my success bundles. You can find out more at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back and look at that question we had earlier, and then we'll talk about some other questions that have come through and some other super chats that have come through. This question asked, an attacker has captured all traffic from a switch without using a tap or on-path technique. Which of the following would allow the attacker access to this data? Would it be wireless jamming, blue snarfing, denial of service, MAC flooding, or malicious script? You think you know the answer? Let's see what you plugged in. 56% of you, which is more than it was last month, said MAC flooding. So this is the one question that you get from last month. And most of you, I think, did a very good job at remembering this. MAC flooding is how someone could gain access to this data because they take advantage of the MAC table inside of the switch being only a certain size. And when you fill up that table, it begins flooding all traffic to all interfaces. So one thing that the attackers will do is fill up the table so that they can then see all traffic from all devices. That's one of the reasons we add additional security onto the switch so that you're able to really prevent somebody from doing something like that by enabling port security, which limits the number of MAC addresses that can be registered from any particular interface on that switch. MAC flooding is still a very viable way. If somebody did not enable port security, then it's absolutely a viable way to gather data. And that is correct. Those of you that answered D, MAC flooding, absolutely correct. Wireless jamming would not collect data. In fact, it would prevent data from being sent. Blue snarfing doesn't have any data that's on a switch that has to do with Bluetooth. And indeed, it's sort of an outdated idea, sort of a vulnerability in Bluetooth that happened many, many, many years ago. Doesn't even apply today. So that would not be the correct answer. A denial of service would also prevent traffic from being sent on the network. And then a malicious script is not what we would use to be able to somehow gather data from other devices. The best answer, in fact, the only one that really makes sense, is indeed D, MAC flooding. That is exactly what we were looking for. Before we go into our performance-based question of the month, I want to thank Heather in the chat room with the £5 super chat. Heather says, I just passed my Security Plus today with no experience in the field, 6 weeks of studying. Couldn't have done it without your practice tests. That's great. Congratulations on your new Security Plus certification. Thank you for the super chat. And that's great to hear. I'm glad the practice exams were able to help you. We'll talk more about my practice exams book later on as we get into the study group. There's a lot of really good stuff in there, and I'm glad it was able to help you, Heather. Congratulations on your Security Plus. You're the one that did the hard work. And now you get to enjoy that certification. Thank you so much for the super chat. Marcus also in the super chat with $10 Canadian super chat. We got $10 there from Marcus. No comments, no messages there. Just Marcus supporting what we're doing here. And thank you so much, Marcus, for that $10 super chat. Let's now talk about performance-based questions. We can probably go through some of these. Performance-based questions are questions that CompTIA will ask you at the beginning of the exam. Now, most of us are familiar with multiple choice-based questions. In fact, the last one we did was a multiple choice-based question. There was a question and then multiple choices to select. And you'll notice there that you've got a chance, a 20% chance, to get the answer right, even if you didn't know it. So it's almost a little bit of a cheat to be able to have a multiple choice based question. CompTIA realizes this and says, let's give you some questions where you have to actually perform a function to do anything but answer a multiple choice question. This might be at a command prompt. They might give you a drag and drop question. It might be a matching question. You might have to put things in order by bandwidth or a certain size or a distance or anything like that. Today, I have a performance-based question for you. And of course, all of our questions on the study group after that first rewind question are all brand new. So no one's seen this before. It's a brand new matching question. And let's see how you do with this one. This matching question asks, match the device to the description. And you'll notice I have 4 devices, but I have 7 descriptions. That means that 3 of these will be unused at the end. And even for bonus points, you can even fill in the blank of what those 3 at the end might be. We'll go through all of them. For those of you listening on the podcast side, let's step through each one of these. The 4 devices that I have, or services or functions, are DLP, proxy server, sensor, and NGFW. Those are the 4 devices, services, or functions that we're looking for. And then we have 7 different descriptions. The first is create performance statistics from a network link. The second is identify known vulnerabilities on a server. Answer C is block private information from traversing the network. Answer D is store encryption keys in a secure appliance. Answer E is block all unwanted application traffic flows. Answer F is access a secure network zone from an insecure network. And then lastly, perform web server requests on behalf of a client. Those are our 7 descriptions to go with the 4 devices that we're trying to go through. If you'd like to answer those, you go to professormesser.com/QA. If you're using the app, you would go to the room name, Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER, and you'd be able to lock in your answer, waiting for people to put their answers into the chat. I'm watching it right now as people are trying to figure out, if you think it's already in the right order, you would put 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, and then you're done. See how easy that is? It's not 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, but it's something similar to that. It's a number and a letter. I guess that's the only thing I can really tell you. Also keep in mind what you answered, because there's no way to see that once you submit it. I know, I didn't write the software. That's just how it works. Just keep in mind and remember, what did I choose for all of those? So you'll know, at least in your count, how many of these you got right and how many of these you got wrong. It's possible on a question like this that you could get some of these correct and you could get some of these wrong. CompTIA will absolutely tell you that they sometimes give you a partial credit. So it's not an all or nothing scenario all the time. The problem is they don't tell you when they do that. I would like to think that if you got a question like this on your exam that lends itself to partial credit, in my mind, I would like to believe that CompTIA would indeed give you partial credit, but we just don't know. And because CompTIA does not share that information, you'll never know. So I guess the moral of that story is, don't worry so much about how they count the points, because ultimately you'll never know how they counted them. They don't share with you how they counted them. You'll never get a question by question breakdown of how you did on the exam. So it doesn't matter. We just want to go through these. So let me quickly step through these again before we do this. The devices are a DLP, a proxy server, a sensor, and NGFW. The descriptions are create performance statistics from a network link, identify known vulnerabilities on a server, block private information from traversing the network, store encryption keys in a secure appliance, block all unwanted application traffic flows, access a secure network zone from an insecure network, and perform web server requests on behalf of a client. So now we have to match those up somehow. We've got a lot of people putting them in now. Got a lot of folks that have finished their Googling to have these here. And as always, please, of course, no answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. We will be able to step through all of this to see how we did with this particular problem. So now let's see how we may have answered this. Let's see what I think the right answer on these might be. So let's step through each one of these, and we should be able to figure out exactly what these might be related to. Let's start with the very first one, DLP. DLP. If you know the abbreviation for that, it might help you with the answer. DLP is data loss prevention. It's a system, a service, or a set of processes that looks for private data on the network, and it's able to alert you that there's private data on the network, or in some cases, block it, drop it completely from it being there. This is the one that I think when you get into more detailed security on a network, it's going to be very, very important to look for social security numbers, credit card numbers, and other private information that you might want to monitor. So this is a very good example of allowing or blocking based on the type of data that's traversing the network. And we're getting very good at blocking types of data on the network these days. The second is a proxy server. This one kind of gives away the process that this uses in the name of the product itself, which is why G, perform web server requests on behalf of a client, fits perfectly with a proxy server. That's what a proxy server does, is instead of you communicating or surfing directly to Google, you send the request to a proxy server. The proxy server queries Google on your behalf. The proxy server receives the response from Google. And at that point, the proxy server can decide what to do. It can look through the response to see if anything malicious might be inside of it. It can look for certain keywords or certain things that maybe it doesn't want to send back to you. And then it can either allow or block that information from being sent to you. That means that there's always that device in the middle of the conversation allowing or blocking traffic. That is a proxy server. And if it sounds sort of antiquated, it sort of is. There are places where we still use proxy servers, but a widespread use of proxies is something that is not commonly seen these days on a corporate network. Let's do the next one, a sensor. This, in the case of the CompTIA Security Plus exam objectives, a sensor is specifically referring to those that are used to gather statistics and metrics, usually from a hardware or software that would be connected to a device or to the network itself. So you might have a sensor inside of a switch. You might have one inside of a router, or you may have purchased a standalone sensor that connects directly to the network to be able to gather all of those statistics. So if you're working with any type of network monitoring tools, network management tools, it's very common for a sensor to be able to collect that data on the network. And lastly, close to my heart, next generation firewall, an NGFW is what we call it. We were calling it a next generation firewall about 17 years ago. That's about when we created those, 17 or 18 now. But it's still next generation. It's this generation, but it's an NGFW. One unique quality of a next generation firewall as compared to perhaps the not next generation, a previous generation firewall, is that previous generation firewalls would allow or block traffic based on a port number, a TCP or UDP port number. So it can allow or block port 80. It can allow or block port 443. Well, now almost all applications use port 80 and port 443. So if you allowed or blocked that port on your firewall, you block everything. So one of the things that a next generation firewall can do is recognize the application that is running on your network so that you aren't blocking a port number, you're blocking Twitter, you're blocking Facebook, you're blocking Microsoft SQL Server, you're blocking Oracle database traffic. And you get to decide of the well over 1,000 or more different types of applications that you might run into. A next generation firewall has great granularity. In fact, it can block the type of thing that you're doing on that service. For example, a next generation firewall can allow you to visit Twitter and read tweets, but it might block if you try to post to Twitter. That's the level of granularity we're talking about with a next generation firewall, and that's why we would block unwanted traffic flows with an NGFW. This means that we have 3 other descriptions we didn't use. We have identify known vulnerabilities on a server, store encryption keys in a secure appliance, and access a secure network zone from an insecure network. So let's see how you might have done with the extra credit, where we fill in the blanks to put a device in that list. We're just going to figure it out based on the description. Identifying known vulnerabilities on a server, well, that's something you would do if you had some type of vulnerability scanner. You would scan the device, and then it would tell you, based on this scan, we think you might be vulnerable for these particular kinds of issues. So a vulnerability scanner is perfect for identifying known vulnerabilities on a server. That's an important consideration. The scanner can only scan for things it knows about. A scanner, very rarely would a scanner be able to provide you with things outside that particular scope, but there are scanners out there that can look for other things occurring. But most of the time, a vulnerability scanner is identifying for known vulnerabilities. Next on our list is storing encryption keys in a secure appliance, which practically describes the hardware security devices that you would use for hardware security module. This is an idea of imagine having a data center full of all of these web servers. Maybe you have 100 web servers. Maybe you have 1,000 web servers, and each one of those web servers has an encryption key. It has a key that is loaded into the web service when that web service starts so that it's able to perform the proper type of encryption. Well, obviously, that private key is a very important key. It's also one that needs to remain very secure. So how do you have a very secure component like this encryption key, and how do you store that? How do you manage it? How do you maintain it? And an HSM is the device that you would have on a network that is able to store those keys and then provide them to the servers as needed. It's a very secure way to make sure that your keys stay secure, even in environments where you have hundreds or even thousands of keys that you have to manage. You can imagine the challenges associated with that. So the HSM is what provides that functionality. Very commonly, an HSM is just going to be in a data center. That's not something you would have at home. So that's the answer for storing encryption keys in a secure appliance is an HSM. And then lastly, we have access a secure network zone from an insecure network. It's a perfect case for a jump server. Jump server is used for maybe you're at home, you're on the internet somewhere else, you jump into this server, which is connected via a secure link to other servers that are on a secure network. So you usually would have to do some type of VPN connection to the jump server, or have some other type of method to be able to look for those. And I think if you were somebody who was working through the details of trying to manage these devices on a secure network, but you're always on an unsecure network, a jump server is a great choice for that. So we've got a vulnerability scanner, we've got our hardware security module, and we've got our jump server. Those were the three things that we were looking for as we were going through all of the different options on the network. I think if you were trying to work through this in a testing environment, this is what you would use. You would have this particular matching that you would be able to go through. And again, maybe you got one of these right, maybe you got all of them right. I say everyone gets partial credit. We'll hand out partial credit to everybody. So don't even worry about either getting it right or getting it wrong. Now, if you don't recognize any of these names, make sure you always go back to your books, your videos, and your other study materials and your exam objectives to make sure you understand exactly what those devices are, how they're used on the network, and that's going to get you ready for your exam. That is your performance-based question of the month. Maybe that's something that can help you as you step through this. Let's do another question. This is a multiple choice based question. We're going back to our multiple choice. This question asks, a company would like to securely remove all data from a hard drive and redeploy the drive on another computer. Which of the following would provide this option? Would it be a secure wipe, degaussing, shredder, quick format, or replace the platters? A company would like to securely remove all data from a hard drive and redeploy the drive on another computer. Which of the following would provide this option? Is it secure wipe, degaussing, shredder, quick format, or replace the platters? If you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to go to the link that's on your page, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer to figure out what these might be. This is always an important thing to consider. You may be asked to do something like this, and you'll need to come up with an idea of, here's how we can make this happen. So we've got a few options on the screen. Make sure you pick one, lock in your answer, go to professormester.com/QA, and lock in that answer. This is exactly where you can go to get your hands on this. This is this is kind of a common problem. In fact, we'll turn the problem around when we're done and see if we can find another couple of answers out of this single question. It might be a pretty good idea. Let's see here. I can see a lot of people are locking in their answers very quickly. I wonder if this is one where we all know what the answer might be. I always wonder if I'm giving you a gimme, if it's one that we're going to have to think about a little more. But of course, the idea is learning about all of these different answers, because everything on here, almost everything on here, comes from the exam objectives. So we want to not only know what the right answer is, we also need to know why the wrong answers are wrong. So we can go through that. Let's see how you did with this particular question. It asked, a company would like to securely remove all data from a hard drive and redeploy the drive on another computer. Which of the following would provide this option? Is it secure wipe, degaussing, shredder, quick format, or replace the platters? How did you answer? We've got 77% of you that say secure wipe. It's super lucky. It's 77. Now it's 78. It's not as lucky. We got degaussing at 15%. So it dropped way off there, but still double digits. And then we got single digits for quick format, 5%. 2% of you said shredder. 0% of you said replace the platters, which I would have thought I would have at least answered, but in fact, not really the right answer. What the challenge here, of course, is we not only need to make sure that all of the data is really deleted, because you don't want to put this drive in another computer and then have a very smart person recover data from that drive, but we also need to make sure the drive remains usable because we want to use it in another computer. So you want to find some way to remotely wipe this data. There's a number of different ways to do that, either with software, with a formatting program, with a lot of different things that you can do. But this is one where if you ever need to reuse that media, or you want to move that hard drive from one machine to another, this is what you would use to make that happen. You would wipe the data to make that happen. And there's a lot of really great secure wipe utilities out there that just overwrite everything in all zeros or all ones, and then nobody is able to recover it. And you don't need a fancy program. Some folks in the chat room said, I'll use Autopsy and recover it, which you certainly could, but you don't even need Autopsy. You can use a very simple utility on a USB drive that you plug in and is able to undelete everything that you just did. So that is exactly what we're looking for, is wiping the data. 79% of you knew that it was secure wipe, and you were absolutely right. That's what you would use if you wanted to deploy this drive again. The degaussing option, 15% of you said degaussing, which is really hit it with a big magnet. That's what effectively, it's an electromagnet, but that's effectively what we do. I used to use a big degaussing device to clear out the data that was on 9-track tapes that are used on mainframes, for example. And you could do the same thing with any type of media. In fact, they always told us, make sure you're not wearing your watch when you go to degauss something, or you could magnetize the things that are in your watch. Degaussing, however, deletes everything. It deletes everything on the platters, on the drive. And in fact, it deletes information on the drive that is critical to the drive working. So when you degauss a drive, it effectively renders the drive useless. You're not able to use that drive anymore. And in this case, of course, we wanted to redeploy the drive on another computer, which means that degaussing is not going to be a very good answer for what we want to be able to do. 4% of you said a quick format, and certainly formatting a drive you would think would lend itself to removing data from the drive. But in fact, a quick format only removes the index for the drive. Of course, on a drive, it's very similar to an index in a book, where at the beginning of the book, it tells you what page things are on. And then if you'd like to look at the things on that page, you can jump directly to that page from the page number. It's very similar on a hard drive. There's an index of all of the data that's on your drive so that when your drive needs to find that data, it references it in the index and then jumps over and is able to retrieve that information. Well, with a quick format, you are effectively deleting the index, but not deleting the data, which means that you could use one of these very simple software utilities to go onto the drive, look through every sector on the drive, and begin rebuilding the index. And of course, it works very, very well and very, very quickly, and you're able to retrieve that data. That's certainly not what we want to have happen here when we deploy the drive, so a quick format is not going to be the right choice. You would have wanted to do a standard format or a full format to be able to make that happen. And indeed, it works the same for other drives as well. If you did a quick format on a USB drive, you would still be able to recover data on that USB drive. That's just the way it works. Shredder is, just as the name implies, is going to crunch and physically destroy that particular hard drive. That's not going to be usable or deployable on another computer, so that's not our best choice. And then replacing the platters, of course, you would never open the case for a hard drive. At that point, the hard drive is ruined. It's unusable. You can't use it at all. So you would, of course, not replace the platters unless you happen to work at a multi-million-dollar facility that has a clean room where your job is to replace platters in a hard drive. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about you wanting to be able to move a drive from one machine to another. You probably don't have $1 million clean room available. The best answer here, the one you should have chosen, the one most of you chose, was indeed Secure Wipe. 79% of you got that absolutely correct. Let's do another question. Let me first, I think I addressed a number of the questions about this as people were going through, but that's exactly what we can do with this. Make sure you know all of those. The only one of these that is not on the exam objectives was replacing the platters. That was just me being a wee bit cheeky. So thank you for your indulgence. The next question we have asks, before access is allowed, oh, this one didn't even put the right answers in. I might skip this one because we only have 2 answers in the results. So we are going to skip this one. I'm going to jump to the next one on our list. So now you know the answers. Here's the next question that asks, it's all live, people. This is how it works. This is a security administrator sending some data. It's a 50-50, right? I should have kept it in there. A security administrator is sending some data to an open port on a remote device. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Would it be ifconfig, netcat, ARP, route, or netstat? A security administrator is sending some data to an open port on a remote device. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it ifconfig, netcat, ARP, route, or netstat? Do you think you know the answer? Go to this URL right here, professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, try to figure out this particular, what appears to be a command line option. Let's see how we do with this one. 5 different command lines. Those are all real things. They all come directly from the exam objectives. So in this case, all 5 of them are things that you should know about. And if you don't, well, we should be able to write those down and make a note of them, put them somewhere so you can go back and study some of them later on. This might be a good one. Let's see how we're doing with this one. ProfessorMesser.com/QA to lock in that answer. Let's see how we do. This is a question. There's a lot of command lines on the Security Plus. There's a lot of command lines on the Security Plus. I think they may have even added more command lines to the latest A+ certification, but that it's pretty close. It may be spot on nearly identical between Security Plus and A+. So if you've gone through A+ and you're finally making your way into Security Plus, this would be one of those really rare occasions where there is a little bit of duplication between those. But there's very little granted for that. So we'll have to see how that works out. Let's see how you did with this one. A lot of you are answering the question here, but it's taking a long time. Stop Googling. No more Googling. You don't get to Google on your exam, so you might as well try not Googling here. And indeed, if you get it wrong here, it doesn't matter. There's no penalty for getting a question wrong here. If anything, getting a question wrong here is more useful to you because now you're learning something as we step through this. So that's the idea. Let's see how you did with this question. The question asked, a security administrator sending some data to an open port on a remote device. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it ifconfig, netcat, ARP, route, and netstat? Let's see how you answered this one. Let's show the results. And we're a little torn. We did not get a majority rule on this one, but we got pretty close to 50%. 44% of you say netcat. 29% of you, right behind it, say route. We've got 11% that said ARP and 10% that said ifconfig, which is effectively a tie for third place. And then lastly, netstat at 7% for this. Well, a security administrator sending some data to an open port can easily do that with netcat. We refer to this as reading or writing information to the network. Obviously, it doesn't work quite the same way as reading or writing information to a storage drive, but functionally, from your command line, it's very similar. We can send information using netcat and then manipulate what service might be running on that particular device. There are other options if you're running Mac OS or you're running Windows. There's incat and some other pieces as well. But that's network concatenation is what that's short for. It concatenates data that you are sending across the network to another service. No, this doesn't have anything to do with cat cables. Everybody calls them cat cables as if they are for kitty cats. No, category is when we're referring to cables. It's not a cat cable, although this would be a lot more fun if it was. And maybe we should do a cat cable video with just cats. Maybe not. Now that I think about it, it sounded good until I actually said it, and then it didn't sound as good as what we had before. So netcat is what we were looking for. 44% of you got that one absolutely right. That's exactly what you would use. We, of course, 29% of you said the route command. The route command is very good to view routes that might be on your system or to manually configure a static route on a particular device. But the route command does not send data to an open port on a remote device, so that would not be the correct answer. 10% of you said ifconfig. Ifconfig is a utility that shows you the interface configuration for your system, and an ifconfig is great for viewing information about how a system may be configured, but it does not send data to an open port on a remote device. So we would not use ifconfig. ARP was the other 10% that you chose. ARP, the address resolution protocol, there's a utility that you can also use on your system to view the results of the address resolution protocol, specifically the cache of IP addresses and MAC addresses that have been created by the ARP command. The ARP command is not, though, something that you would send to an open port on a remote device. And then lastly, netstat, which gives you plenty of statistics about how the network is performing on a particular device. But again, netstat does not send data across the network to an open port on a remote device. So that's not going to work either. The only answer here that makes any sense, that really matches what we were looking for, was indeed answer B. That's what we were hunting for. The netcat command is what we were hoping to find. Well, as you can already tell, there are, well, first let's step through, well, we did the list of those, but 44% of you, that was the number I was looking for, are the ones that chose netcat. So you did great with that one. I think we did a pretty good job of hunting that one down. As you've already seen, there is a very wide variety of information on the Security Plus exam. It is an extensive certification exam. It is huge. There is so much information in there. And I have a set of course notes that go along with that. And of course, I don't even have my course notes up on my screen. I'm doing a very bad job at being a host for you. But the course notes are designed to give you a perspective of what is on the videos, all of the text, all of the graphics, all of the important charts. They are all in here. This is the physical edition of the course notes. There is also a digital edition of the course notes that I would show you if I was a little more organized this morning. Let's pop up our digital edition and I can show this to you. Should be pretty good if I can actually get the PDF loaded on my screen in a format that you might be able to see. There it is. There's the course notes. It's big. It is 121 pages of text, of graphics, of charts. It's all in here. Everything that's in the videos is in here. So if you're someone who is trying to work through all of the information that's in all of these videos and you just simply don't have the time to go through every single one of these, you should have a look at the course notes. They're available both in a digital form. If you get the physical book, I print this out and I ship it to you, and you get the digital version for free along with it. So while you're waiting on that to arrive in the mail, you'll at least have the digital version that you can work through. There's also bundles available where you can bundle the course notes along with my practice exams for a little bit of a cost break, so that it doesn't cost the same as buying the two individually. That's all available on my site. Have a look, professormesser.com/601cn for the 601 course notes, or follow the links that are in the menu items on the website. So let's do some more on here. We've got plenty more to step through. I've got another present. I'm going to switch this over because now I need to jump past my netcat. I've got more questions for you that we can do. This next question, here we go. This question asks, during login, a notice is shown with a warning against any illegal use of the system. Which control type is associated with this banner? Is it deterrent, corrective, detective, physical, or compensating? During login, a notice is shown with a warning against any illegal use of the system. Which control type is associated with this banner? Is it deterrent, corrective, detective, physical, or compensating? If you think you know the answer, follow that link. There it is, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. Let's see how you do. As always, of course, no answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. Be able to get through all of this. See what it happens to be, what this login notice, this banner that's being put up, what is that? What kind of control is that? There are, of course, tons of control types you need to know. Not tons, but a handful. It just seems like tons. But we'll have to figure it out, what it happens to be. A lot of you are locking this one in. I feel like a lot of you have zoned into one of these and you're putting in the answers. I don't look at the answer until you see it as well. So who knows what you might have chosen for this one. Should be pretty good to see what this happens to be. All of these are real control types. So you have to absolutely make sure you know what the control type happens to be able to pick the right one. And of course, if you don't recognize any of the control types, you need to go figure those out. They could certainly appear on your exam. There's so much in the exam objectives. Make sure you step through every single one of those. Let's see how you did with this question. The question asked, during login, a notice is shown with a warning against any illegal use of the system. Which control type is associated with this banner? Is it deterrent, corrective, detective, physical, compensating? Let's see what you chose. We'll show the results. 85% of you say that is a deterrent. Is it really? Let's find out. 11% of you said it is a detective. Detective is what we would use. The idea behind this, of course, single digits for the rest. Single digits for compensating, for physical, and corrective, with 1% and 2% a piece in each one of those. So 84% of you say that is a deterrent, control type. You're deterring what is going on. If it were a corrective control type, then an attack would have already happened, and we were trying to correct the problem that was created. Well, in this case, we're just logging in and seeing a message. Nobody's hacked the system. There's nothing wrong, so it would not be a corrective control type. However, a deterrent control type is a discouragement. It's wagging its finger at you and saying, don't you do bad things on my network, because if you do bad things, I'm going to send Vito and he's going to take care of things for me. So that's one that is very useful. This could be it could be something that's on a door as you're walking in that says, all hackers don't come in this room, or we'll do bad things. Or it could be just a login banner that says, thanks for logging in. This system is protected. If you do something untoward on the system, we will find reason to not like you any longer and do other things with it. Trying to deter what is going on. And that is certainly the type of control we were looking for, is a deterrent. And of course, 84% of you said, yeah, that sounds right. We are trying to prevent somebody from causing problems by giving them a warning, by scaring them just a little bit so that they perhaps maybe won't do that. Now, I'm wondering, because we've all logged into these systems before that pop up the little banner and it gives us that message. And to some degree, there's some good legal reasons for doing this. Because if you went to a court with the attacker and said, this person hacked into our system, and the other side might say, well, did you put any notices up saying, don't hack our system? As backwards as that sounds, having some type of clear notice that what you are about to do is very, very illegal and we will come after you will actually help you later on if you get to that point. So although it seems sort of pointless for us that are simply logging in, this could be very helpful from a legal perspective later on down the road. Always good to have that there. A detective type of control system, we got 11% of you said detective, is when we were able to detect, we were able to identify a particular security event. Having something that can detect problems, like an intrusion prevention system is a detection system. That is a detective control. That is something that's very useful to have, but in this case, we're not trying to detect a problem. We're simply trying to explain why someone may not want to attack this system. We've got 2% of you that said compensating. We already talked about compensating controls a little bit on how when something goes wrong, we need something that can compensate for the problem. So if the attacker goes to the side of the building and turns off your power, it would be great if you had another power source, battery backup, a generator. That would be something that can compensate for the problems. And we've also got a corrective control that can fix the problem if it's something that has occurred. And we've got a physical control. Having a locked door, for example, is a physical control. Now, what's interesting, and some of you are even mentioning this, an IPS could be both a detective control because it can detect and report that something has occurred, and it can also prevent it by blocking it. Just because a system is associated with one control type doesn't mean it couldn't be also associated with other control types. And you'll notice that in my documents. In fact, nobody uses IDSs anymore. You would never go out and buy an IDS. You would always go out and buy an IPS. And in fact, these days you probably wouldn't buy either an IPS or an IDS because nobody's doing that anymore. It's all wrapped up into our next generation firewalls. And you would configure the firewall to notify you if there was a problem. That would be detective. And it might even find out that and block the information that was on your system. So you can, of course, prevent any of those from occurring. This is the benefit of that, of having all of those there, is that each one of these components can fit into multiples of these control types. It's not one device to one control type. There's always devices that can do many, many different things and might fit into different ways to control the traffic going across your network. That is why it's important to study those control types so you know where you might put a particular device or a particular control into which of those categories. In this case, 85% of you were spot on. Deterrent is what we were looking for. That is the correct answer. It's what we were looking for. And if you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that says that you are here and watching this, and you have earned 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. The way that you would earn that email is you have to follow these instructions. If you do not follow these instructions, you will not receive an email. I get people all the time that send me that don't follow this set, and they don't get a response, unfortunately. What you want to do is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, and in there is a Contact Us link. Click the Contact Us. It will bring up a form that you will put your name, your email address, and in the subject line, put September 2022 Security Plus Study Group or something similar to that. so that I know where this came from. And then in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, deterrent. Deterrent is the super secret code word of the month. And then, of course, you're able to put anything else into that message you would like. For those of you wondering, what am I talking about? A continuing education unit credit? Simply Google the CompTIA continuing education, and you'll learn all about the renewal process for any one of those. That's exactly where you should go and have all those there. A deterrent is what we want to put there. If you put anything else into that message, I'll read through them. I love reading your messages, and you're more than welcome to put anything else in there, but you don't have to. You can just put the word deterrent, hit the button, and you're done. It takes me about a week to go through these continuing education unit emails, but check your inbox and your spam folder. It will get to you eventually. And that is the process. Go to the top or the bottom of the website, click the Contact Us link, fill in those different fields that are in that message, send it to me. It's that easy. It's not very difficult. It's something we can easily do to make that happen. Let's do another question. We're on a roll here. We might as well. This next question asks, a system administrator is authenticating all users to a central database. Which of the following would be the best way to implement this authentication method? Would it be DNSSEC, SMIME, SRTP, SSH, LDAP-S? A system administrator is authenticating all users to a central database. Which of the following would be the best way to implement this authentication method? Is it DNSSEC, SMIME, SRTP, SSH, or LDAP-S? If you think you know the answer, follow this link, professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. For those of you that are collecting those continuing education units, I think for Security Plus, you can collect 10 webinar category CEUs by doing that. There are, I think the total, you need like 50 CEUs to renew Security Plus. So you can only get so many by watching these videos, alas. I would love it if you could watch all the videos and you get all the CEUs, but that's not the way it works either. And these days, I think most people are using CertMaster CE. They're using other methods to renew. They're not using CEUs, but you can still send me the email. I'll still send you the CEU. And if you use it, you use it. And if you don't, that's fine too. It's not very useful to be able to make that happen. And I think the CertMaster CE is just easy. I've had people show up and say, my certification, I've had it for 3 years. It expires tomorrow and I've not renewed it. I don't want to lose this certification. What do I do? You should purchase CertMaster CE. You can go through it in a number of hours, complete it, and be renewed for 3 years. So that's usually what I will recommend to folks. It's a very easy way to make that happen. An easy way to, an almost guaranteed way to do that. You don't have to collect CEUs. You don't have to send any additional money. You don't have to do those CEU maintenance fees. There's no time extent there. You just go through this CBT, and you just have to answer every question correct on the CBT. If you don't answer every question correct, you just take it again. You just keep taking it until it works, till you get to 100%. So by then, you really understand exactly what's involved with that CertMaster CE. That's pretty useful. So let's go through, now that we have a number of you have answered this question, let's see how you did with this question. The question asked, a system administrator is authenticating all users to a central database. Which of the following would be the best way to implement this authentication method? Is it DNSSEC, SMIME, SRTP, SSH, LDAP-S? There's a lot of S's there because this is all secure, right? Let's see how you answered. We'll show the results. And we can see that 65% of you say it's LDAP-S is what we would do. 12% say it's DNSSEC and 10% say SSH. That's effectively a two-way tie for second place. And then a two-way tie for third place between SMIME and SRTP with about 6%, both of those. So the goal here and what we're trying to do is really find a way to authenticate. And for all of these secure protocols that I have here, the only one that does anything with authentication is indeed LDAP-S. LDAP-S is a lightweight directory access protocol secure, and it provides us with a way to perform lookups to query a central directory to be able to find what's in there. And if you're applying it from an authentication perspective, you can authenticate over that same connection because all of the authentication details are also in that directory. So we can do that from a third-party device. LDAP and LDAP-S is what we were looking for there. These other protocols don't provide authentication. 12% of you, for example, said DNSSEC. That is the secure version of DNS, becoming much more popular lately because it's a way to privately query or securely query a DNS server so that if somebody's looking at your DNS lookups, they have no idea what type of services you're looking up. You can find a lot of information just from DNSSEC. SSH, 10% of you chose SSH. SSH is secure shell. It's a great way to securely perform a terminal connection to a remote device and use the command line. But SSH is not very useful for authenticating users to a central database. Can't really use it for that, at least not very well. So SSH is not what we would use either. SMIME, 6% of you chose SMIME. Secure MIME is the secure method for integrating multimedia mail extensions. It's just a way to include the digital signatures, encryption, and other cryptography features to a mail client. If you're using, for example, Microsoft Outlook, then you're using SMIME to perform all of those secure features. And then lastly, SRTP, the real-time protocol, and the secure version of the real-time protocol is a voice over IP or voice over or media over IP type protocol. And the difference, of course, here is that everything sent over that particular protocol is encrypted. So we know anything sent over SRTP can't be listened in by anyone else. It's very trivial to collect packets, pull all those packets together, and then replay a voice over IP conversation. You can do it with Wireshark. Free tools available to do exactly that. So that's where we're looking at. The secure port we were hoping for in this case is LDAP-S. That's the one. 67% of you chose that. LDAP-S is the option that we were looking for. Hopefully that's one that you're familiar with. And if you don't know any of those, there's even more secure protocols listed in the exam objectives. Make sure you go back and look through all those. So folks in the chat room, we're going back and forth about port numbers. But of course, if you look at the exam objectives, the port numbers for these secure protocols are not listed. You don't need to know those for the exam. Not some, if you needed to know it for the exam, they would be listed in the exam objectives. That's a very specific piece of information. And they chose not to put the port numbers, which means you do not need to memorize such a thing. That's why you'll notice there's no port numbers on that slide, because CompTIA had said, well, you don't need to know that for the exam. Now, later on in the things you do in life, now that's certainly something you might want to do. But from the perspective of the exam objectives and passing your Security Plus, you don't need to know these secure port numbers clearly, because it's not in the exam objectives. That is the thing that you have to keep in mind. I know we're at the top of the hour, but I really want to do one more. Let's do one more question that I have here. This question, a very simple question that asks, which of the following would be the best way to provide non-repudiation? Would it be hash, sector by sector image, business continuity plan, digital signature, or SSO? Which of the following would be the best way to provide non-repudiation? Is it hash, sector by sector image, business continuity plan, digital signature, or SSO? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Yeah, as far as port numbers are concerned, you're welcome to go through the entire set of CompTIA exam objectives. Any port numbers that are listed in those exam objectives, you should memorize. It turns out in the Security Plus exam objectives, there aren't any. There are none in the exam objectives. I know a lot of people are told you need to memorize these port numbers for the exam. You need to do this memorization. What port numbers? You're just going to guess? Do you do 10? Do you memorize 50? How many? That's ridiculous. I think instead of spending your time memorizing something that's not listed in the exam objectives, I think you would do better to memorize other things that are listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. That's what I would recommend. Now, might there be questions on the exam where port numbers show up and port numbers are referenced, and doesn't the exam objectives expect you to know certain things already? And it does, but we don't know what those are. So the difference here from my perspective of someone who's trying to tell you, how do you pass this exam? Do you spend time studying things that are completely unknown and you're making a guess at what you should study? Or do you spend your time studying exactly what CompTIA told you should study? That's the difference. So that's why I say, don't worry about port numbers. Don't waste your time trying to memorize a set of port numbers that I don't know where they came from. I don't know who came up with that list. I don't know where they are, what they were thinking, but there are no port numbers listed in the Security Plus exam objectives. I think your time would be better spent learning the things that are in the exam objectives. That's my argument. So hopefully you can kind of see the perspective of that. If CompTIA didn't specifically tell you, here are port numbers you need to know, why are you studying them? I guess that's the question. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, which of the following would be the best way to provide non-repudiation? Is it hash, sector-by-sector image, business continuity plan, digital signature, or SSO? What did you choose? Let's have a look. We have 62% of us that say digital signature, but almost just over a quarter of you, 26%, say it's hash is what you should use. And then lastly, we've got 5% that said SSO and 5% said business continuity. That is certainly a tie for third place. And then lastly, way back in fourth place at 2%, sector by sector image. So the real question here is about non-repudiation. Non-repudiation is a policy or technique or a method of guaranteeing that the information you're looking at really came from the source of the message. And there's no question that it came from that source. No one else could have written it. No one else could have provided it to you. It must have come from that particular person. This is a very powerful function for cryptography. It's a very powerful function to use just kind of in business in general, because if you receive something that's written, you want to be sure that everything in there is exactly the same way it was written originally, and you want to be sure that it really came from the person you thought it came from. And that is the point, the purpose of non-repudiation. That is an authentication for where this came from, and you would have high confidence that it occurred. That is the beautiful part of this. We also have different ways to implement non-repudiation. One might be through a Mac, not a Macintosh, not a media access control, or many of the other Mac abbreviations. A message authentication code can be added to a message so that the two parties can verify that the message came from each other. That is one that is specific to only the two parties, but it wouldn't allow a third party to also verify that that message came from the original person. To do that, we would need something like a digital signature where we can publicly provide this non-repudiation to anyone who would be interested in viewing that. So digital signature is, in this case, an extremely powerful way to provide non-repudiation, and that's why 62% of you chose a digital signature in this particular case. So that is exactly the question we were looking for. That is the thing that really is the important part, is providing non-repudiation. Now, a hash, 25% of you chose a hash, but a hash has no method of non-repudiation. There's no way to tell on the hash who sent this. You can't qualify who sent it. You can't guarantee who sent it. And the only thing a hash can really help you is to determine, was anything in this particular piece of information changed from the time the hash was originally created. But the hash doesn't help you with who sent it to you. And can we confirm and qualify and guarantee that that's the person who sent it to you, that's what non-repudiation is. That means we can point back to that person and says, you sent this to me. And they can't say, I repudiate that. I deny that I ever sent that to you. No. We have a digital signature. We have non-repudiation. You are not able to repudiate that. You're not able to say it didn't come from you. We have your digital signature. So that is where that particular scenario comes from. That digital signature becomes very important for non-repudiation. I say, sir, I repudiate that. I see it exactly going down, just like that. Maybe we'd use an old-timey no. I repudiate you, sir. It's getting worse as we go, isn't it? The other options that you had available were hash. We talked about why a hash wouldn't be the right answer. 5% of you said a business continuity plan. A business continuity plan is one that you would use to give you instructions or processes if something in your business was not able to work normally. I think about the hurricane that just came through Florida. I'm in Florida, and I had a number of business continuity plans set up. If I was not able to do this live stream today, I didn't know, would I have power? Would I have internet? Would I be in a position? Would my studio still be here? You know, these are questions, and then I have to think about what would I do if any of those things happen. That's my business continuity plan. And then we have 5% of you that said SSO. SSO stands for single sign-on. Single sign-on, a very useful feature, so I can sign on one time, maybe at the beginning of the day, and then I have access to any resource I need to access on the network without having to put in my username and password over and over and over and over again. And then lastly, a sector-by-sector image. If you are collecting data from a storage device, like a hard drive or an SSD, you might choose to capture everything that's on that device to an exact duplicate or clone of that device. And one way to do that is through software or hardware that can provide a sector-by-sector image. What's great about that is it will go through the sector, and even if the sector doesn't have any active data, but it has some old data inside of it, it will copy the old data and put it into the image. That way, when you go through this later on with Autopsy or some other type of third-party tool to sift through all of that data, you'll have an exact representation. In fact, you would be able to undelete data on the image because you made a sector-by-sector image. A lot of the imaging software that you might use on your computers doesn't do a sector-by-sector image. It grabs a file-by-file image, which is very functional, but from a security perspective, it doesn't provide us with any forensics capability. Having a sector-by-sector image provides a fantastic way to get every bit of data from that device and have an exact duplicate of that storage drive. That's very, very useful. So can I apply a digital signature to a sector-by-sector image? You absolutely can. In fact, often is. So we could take a sector-by-sector image. Now we have taken a physical drive. We have imaged it into a virtual drive, into a file, into an image file. And then I might want to digitally sign that image file to say, I just took this. And if you receive this image file later, you can validate that digital signature, which says, first, I'm absolutely the person who performed this image, non-repudiation. And I'm also can guarantee that nothing in this image has been changed. That's the hashing part behind the digital signature that we have inside of that. It's just included with the digital signature. So that makes it very easy to confirm this is exactly the image this person took, and this is the exact person who took the image. So sure, we can combine those. Where can we use a sector-by-sector image? Autopsy is a perfect example. We mentioned that earlier. Autopsy is a great way to do it. I have, interestingly enough, I have a project that never really made it to YouTube where I bought, I think it was 6 or 8 different used hard drives off of eBay, and I captured an image of those drives using a third-party tool, and I used Autopsy to go through the drive and show me the data that was on that drive. I found all kinds of data. A number of the drives were wiped. Whoever did certain number of these drives knew what they were doing. They wiped everything on the drive, and there was nothing there. But there were a few of them. One of them was a drive from a point-of-sale terminal. At least that's what it appeared to be. It was a Windows point-of-sale terminal, and there was all kinds of information about the company, their products, and I didn't go any further into that than that because at that point I realized this doesn't really work for my YouTube channel. It wasn't really my web front end. That's not what I wanted to do. So we ended up not doing those videos, But what an interesting thing to see by performing that sector by sector image and using autopsy. There's plenty of great videos on the internet anyway that can show you some of those. You don't need to worry about that or break those things down. So that is the answer we were looking for. Digital signature is the one that provides us with that non-repudiation, something that perhaps you wouldn't have any other way. Well, if you like these questions, then you're really going to like my practice exams. My practice exams are questions that I have written specifically for the Security Plus exam. These practice exams are not just written for the exam. I wrote them with a similar style and certainly with a very narrow focus on only the exam objectives. In fact, that's the perfect focus, is on the exam objectives. Why would you want training materials that went outside the scope of a very well-established set of exam objectives? And yet those types of products and books and tests exist out there in the world, and I have no idea why people tend to use or even publish things like that. Let's in fact look at my book. I'll give you an example directly from my practice exams book. This is the digital version of the practice exam book, and it has on it a question that asks, a system administrator, Daniel, is working on a contract that will specify a minimum required uptime for a set of internet-facing firewalls. Daniel needs to know how often the firewall hardware is expected to fail between repairs. Which of the following would best describe this information? Is it MTBF, RTO, MTTR, or MTTF? So we have a number of options there. Now, this is a PDF. It's a book. It's published as a book. But even though it's a PDF, I added some extra features inside of it. For example, where it says quick answer, that would just tell you if it's A, B, C, or D. But if we click on the details, it takes us to a separate page later on in the book. So we don't have to flip through the book to the answer pages that are in the back. It just takes you there. And then in that book in the back, it tells you the answer is A, MTBF. MTBF, mean time between failures, is a prediction of how often a reparable system will fail. And this is a way that you can qualify that you got the answer right. Of course, I never get the answer right. I always get the answer wrong. And if you scroll down a bit, I also document every incorrect answer, and I tell you why the incorrect answers are wrong. And I will recommend, if you already have this book or you're planning to get this book, even if you get the answer right and you read through why you got it right, I highly recommend you go through the wrong answers, because you may find that on your exam, information from the wrong answers turns out to be the right answer on the exam. So there's a lot of good information at every single answer that's in here. I also put at the very bottom a link to the video. So if you didn't even understand the question and you didn't understand the answers and you're thinking, I need more study time, I say, here's the video that this particular question came from. You can either click the link in your PDF, or if you have the book version, you can point your camera at the QR code and it takes you right to the video. When you're done, of course, you can click the back button that's in your browser and then go to the next question that's on the list. That is my practice exams. I spent months writing these questions and making sure that it had the most specific information for the exam objectives, that we did not go outside the scope of the exam objectives, and they're written with a similar feel, a similar style to what you might find on the actual exam. That is the Security Plus practice exams. You'll find that at professormesser.com/securitype. And the pricing for the exams differs depending on if you buy them with the course notes or you get them with the success bundle. But you'll find all the pricing and everything else at professormesser.com/securitype. Also, as I mentioned, make sure you get the exam objectives. You can find a link to the objectives at professormesser.com/objectives, or go to your favorite search engine and type in CompTIA exam objectives, and it will take you there. We do one of these study groups every month, at least once a month. The next one is going to be in October. On October the 19th, we've got others during October. We've got one on the 4th and the 6th and the 12th. Those are 4th and the 6th is A+, the 12th is Network Plus, and the next Security Plus will be on October the 19th. Now, that date can change. So if that does change, I will update my calendar so that you'll know exactly when that date is going to be. Always check in with the calendar to know when that's going to be. Go to professormesser.com/calendar for any of that. This is a lot of information in this first hour, but we're not done yet. We've got an after show where instead of me asking you the questions, you get to ask me the question. So we can talk about other things that you might have, and we can go through. Don't forget about following us on Twitter or Instagram, depending on which one you'd like to get your questions on. And of course, all of our Security Plus videos are on YouTube. If you like this video, we'd love it if you could give it a thumbs up or even subscribe to our channel. I think that would be great as well. In fact, I'm talking to, last week I talked to my YouTube folks. I'm having another meeting with them on Friday. They start looking at these statistics. They're showing me how often you watch the videos. They roll up all of the people who liked it. And I wouldn't have that conversation with them. I wouldn't be able to get information from them about how to make my channel better without your support. So I sure appreciate everything that you've done and the support you've shown. It really does help. You may not even see it on your side. It's something that you can do for free, and it's very quick to do, but it really does make a difference on our side, and we sure appreciate that. Stick around for the after show. We got a lot more coming. This has been a great first hour. We're going to do even more in the second hour. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Okay, let's see if I can change a camera. Let's get rid of the graphic. Now I need to change my graphics around, and then we'll take some questions from the crowd. If you would like to ask a question, you're probably watching this video on YouTube or on my website. There's a chat that is on YouTube. There's a chat that's on my website. It's the same chat. And if you are there, that's where you would put your questions in, put them into the chat, and I would be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. We can step through all of those. Before we do that, I want to thank Table Beads Benny for the $9.99 super chat. The Table Beads Benny says, passed my Network Plus yesterday with a score of 780. Great score. Your video series is always the core of my studying. Same with Security Plus 501. When I passed it last year, you must have snuck in right there at the end. You are the GOAT, Prof. I think that's a good thing, right? Thanks so much. You're so welcome. Well, thank you for the $9.99 super chat. Congratulations on the Security Plus last year and the Network Plus that you passed yesterday. Fantastic. Glad you did that. I'm interested in knowing, now that you've got Network Plus and Security Plus, now what's next? What are you thinking? What's the next one going to be when we step through that? This would be pretty good to try to figure out what's your strategy. Do we now get a job and then work on another certification? Are there certain other certifications that employers might be looking for in your area? That's what we want to do, is work through those. Let's take some questions from the chat room. We've got quite a few that have come up throughout this last hour. So if any of those, it's hard to scroll back and find all of those, but if you happen to know exactly which question you would like to ask, you can put them right into the chat, and I'll be walking through this and figuring out the details. In every study group this month, I've tried to ask about what I can do to try to land my first job, since I've now earned my A+ Network Plus and Security Plus. I'm losing hope of getting started. Well, the benefit of job hunting is that it is a horrible experience until you get a job offer, and then it was fantastic. So all I can really tell you, for those of you that have not had a lot of experience in rejection, is that get ready, because you'll have a lot of rejection. And in my career, I've had lots of rejection. I've been in many jobs that I have applied for where I didn't get the job. Jobs where I've sent in my resume and heard nothing. It happens. That's the way the industry works. That's the way sort of the world works in the world of trying to get a job. One of the challenges you have, though, is if you are not in IT already, getting that foot in the door can be really challenging. And so I highly, highly recommend that you go back and go to any of my videos that are these study groups, and there's a link there to a video I did called How to Get a Job in IT with No Experience. And that is a very solid, dense video. It is full of information. There's no intro. There's no There's no slack in there. There's nothing that in there that's just filler. It's 30 minutes long. It's a big video. I don't often do videos that long, but it's 30 minutes long. And I will tell you, every minute is valuable information. And it goes across a number of different things, not just the things you need to have, but really focuses on the 4 elements that really position you best to get a job in IT, which are a formal education, your industry certifications, some practical experience, which does not necessarily mean professional, but does mean practical. And lastly, you know somebody that works there. That 4th one's a good one. And I talk all about that in that video. That's what I would really recommend you go look at. It's how to get a job in IT with no experience. Just hunt for that in my YouTube channel, or you can find it on the YouTube video description of any of these most recent study groups. It's right in there. And I spent a lot of time making that video. Spent a lot of time not making the video, but really the prep. When I say making a video, that also involves the process prior to me shooting the video. Most of the work with videos happens before we turn the camera on. There's a lot of research that takes place, a lot of crafting of the message, which sounds kind of trite when I say it that way, but I want to be sure that what I'm presenting to you is presented in a way that makes sense, that is clear, that is concise. And even after doing all that, 30 minutes. Oh, it's concise? Is it? 30 minutes? It is. That's as concise as I could make it. There's a lot in there. That's all I got to tell you. So that's why I would recommend going through that. So we spend a lot of time on the prep. So before we even start shooting, I want to be sure the information we're providing to you is as accurate and helpful as possible. And that's what I would recommend. Let's see. There was a question earlier. I mentioned renewing with CertMaster CE. And some people said, wow, that's really, really expensive. And I have a feeling you are not looking at CertMaster CE. CertMaster is a brand within CompTIA. So there is a CertMaster Learn, CertMaster Labs, CertMaster Practice, and there's CertMaster CE. CertMaster CE is the continuing education version of the CertMaster. It's the one I mentioned that you can go through CertMaster CE and renew your certification. So let's look at the one, for example, for Security Plus. This is from the CompTIA webpage. It is all I did was type in CertMaster CE. It was the first link that Google gave me. And it says, complete a CompTIA CertMaster CE course. They have CertMaster CE for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. If we click the Security Plus link, this was launched October the 1st, 2020. It's a self-paced e-learning course. As I mentioned, you have to have the SY0-501 or earlier because you are renewing it to the 601 version. It takes about 8 to 10 hours, depending on the learner knowledge, and it's $199. So I think if you were to do the CEU maintenance fees, I think the maintenance fees come out to like $148 or $149 or something like that. And so for Security Plus, it's not much more. It's like $50 more. And now you've got your CertMaster CE. So it's not as expensive as you might think. Now, if you ran into something like CertMaster Learn, it's a product that's like over $500, but that's an all-in-one training program. You can find out more about CertMaster Learn on my site as well under my recommended study materials. But CertMaster Learn is an all-in-one. It's got videos and books and questions and practice exams, and there's tons in there. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about renewing your certification, which would be CertMaster CE. That's what that CE is for, continuing education. To be able to have that there. So I wanted to clarify that because I did see a comment go by in the chat earlier on those, just so you would know. I'm not talking about the expensive $500 products. I'm talking about one that's about the same price as renewing it using the CEU maintenance fees. And no, there's not a CertMaster for other certifications. Currently, it's only for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. That's the 3 that are supported. If you have one of the other certifications which require renewal, you will have to follow one of the other renewal methods, like taking a CompTIA exam, taking a third-party certification exam, attending classes, attending webinars. There's collecting CEUs in other ways. That's really what we're talking about. So that's what I would recommend, is both of those. Let's see if you are ever going to step through and look at how to deal with these. This is a really good question because there's not a single answer for it. This question came in the chat room is, how do you effectively mitigate a distributed denial of service attack? And I have been on the end of distributed denial of service attacks before. As many of you know, I was a systems engineer for a next generation firewall company. The firewalls we had included a number of different mitigation options. Some of them work well, some of them don't, depending on the type of attack. There's different ways to go about addressing a distributed denial of service attack. And it really, the answer, and I think anyone will give you this answer, the answer is, how do you mitigate it? It depends. It depends on what the attack looks like. In most cases, I would say the vast majority of cases, if you're dealing with a distributed denial of service attack, then you either have tools available at your ISP. The ISP has the tools. You don't have them. The ISP already has tools that are designed to prevent denial of service attacks. They can work with you to figure out what that would be on their side, and it usually takes the form of different hardware that they have that they can connect to your network and mitigate a good bit of that. But there are also third-party tools and utilities that you might already use. For example, Cloudflare is a very common way to connect networks and devices up these ways. Cloudflare is a proxy service that provides a number of different security features, but I think the one that they talk about the most, in fact, they even have a button right on the top that says, "Ooh, are you under attack right now? Because we can help you." And that's why if you were to do a DNS lookup, if you were to perform a dig of www.professormesser.com, and then you do a reverse lookup of the IP address that it showed you, you would see that the address that's associated with my web server is actually an IP address that is owned by Cloudflare. And that's because I have this reverse proxy so that when you're talking to me, you're really talking to Cloudflare. Cloudflare talks to me. I send back the website to Cloudflare and they provide it to you. But the benefit of that is that Cloudflare has technology in their network, in their proxy, that if I do receive a distributed denial of service attack, I can click a button, and the software that they use is smart enough to figure out what of this traffic is good and what part of this traffic is bad. And they do that in a number of different ways by examining what has good traffic looked like in the past, and then they can compare that to the traffic that you're receiving today. There's also a number of other ways to determine what that is. Some distributed denial of service attacks, you don't see many of these days, but some DDoS attacks have the same data that is being sent to you just from thousands, tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands of devices. If it's exactly the same data from all of those devices, it's very trivial to create a filter, usually on your ISP side, that can filter out that information so it never reaches you. Or best case, it comes down there and you're able to work with that on your local machine. Maybe you set up a filter on your next generation firewall to block it at the firewall. The problem is once it's gotten to you, even on the outside of your firewall, on the internet side of your firewall, it's still a lot of traffic, and they could very easily overwhelm your internet connection if it's not very big. Sometimes if it is very big. There's also, if you ever wanted to get into it, there's also very specific statistical methods to mitigate denial of service. A good example, if you look through really any next generation firewall, you'll find a number of these. For example, if you were going to look at a distributed denial of service attack, you could perform like a drop of data where you might have a way to set up and have certain amount of data come in, and then as your system fills up by this attack, it removes a certain percentage of those. It's a random early discard is what it's called. It's called RED. That's a very non-scientific way to free up more resources but it at least keeps things running. The problem is that you could be randomly discarding legitimate traffic along with the distributed denial of service. But your hope is that you're at least keeping the system running and the people you didn't discard would still be able to operate. That's a very complex process. And there's other discard algorithms that can be used along those, but very useful to have that. So there's just, and by the way, there's companies that have been built on making products that do nothing but prevent denial of service attacks. So you might have a standalone device that you're using. Most of those are really being used for the ISP and on the ISP side. You probably wouldn't have those on your own network, but your ISP absolutely does, because that's an enormous concern, especially for their business customers. So that's a sample. That's just a tiny little sample of some of the ways to mitigate denial of service. But there's lots of ways to do that. I would recommend going and looking at some great white papers. I'm a little biased towards Palo Alto Networks because I used to work there, but they have some great documentation and really step you through not just how it works on their firewall, but how does this technology really work? What's going on behind the scenes? And they can provide you with more details of that. If you find any documentation from them, it's high quality stuff. It's good stuff there. Let's see what other questions we might have that came through. I was talking earlier about trying to find a way to mitigate these and how to get a job in IT and all of these things that come up. We do have a number of videos we've done along those, and I think it'd be nice to do others that can provide a similar feature. I need to make another list of topics that we can do. I have another set of videos, for example, on why your resume keeps getting rejected. So those videos are another good example of things that can help you get a job or get a better job, which is really what we're trying to do here. Another question in the chat room regarding Cloudflare. Does Cloudflare deal with remote viewers and packet sniffers? Maybe you could provide me with more detail there. Are you asking if Cloudflare has remote viewers and packet sniffers integrated into their system, or are you saying, are there people trying to perform remote views and packet sniffing, and then what happens? Give me more clarification. We'll step through that and work through all of those pieces. Web application attacks, they include the network level too? Not generally. There's not a lot of attacks at the network level relative to the number of attacks available at the application level. And in fact, most people are trying to get to the data. There's many more vulnerabilities in an application to get to that data. And I think most attackers spend their time trying to find vulnerabilities in an application or operating system instead of trying to find a vulnerability at the protocol level of the network. There are certainly security concerns we have at layer 3 and layer 4. In the past, there have been vulnerabilities that we have identified at layer 3 and layer 4, but those are usually very corner case type issues. They're usually not something that is easily replicated, but they do recognize that there was a vulnerability there and they corrected it. Now we're all running with different things. For example, there used to be a time when you're setting up a session using TCP, and it would use a TCP source port number that was incremental. So we would use source port 7 on our next, or let's say we're using source port 1024. And then on the next session we would use source port 1025. And then on the next session we used source port 1026. So we're doing it incrementally, one at a time, which could allow someone, if they connected to you, to be able to easily know what another port number might be next. And by doing that, be able to somehow take advantage of that traffic flow. Certainly to be able to do a SYN attack, to be able to do a thin attack. There's all kinds of attacks you can do at that point if you know that a session is active and what the port numbers happen to be. So we had to tell the operating system manufacturers, stop doing that. Let's make TCP randomized. And that's so long ago when that happened, but that was a really good example of how the network level was vulnerable to a very unusual style of attack, one that's not easily replicated, but it still existed. So the vulnerability was there, so we corrected the vulnerability. There's other attacks like that too. It's not in Security Plus anymore, but things like the Smurf attack. If you want to go back and do a Wikipedia read on Smurf attack, that's another really good example of how we used layer 3 to be able to create an attack, a denial of service attack in that particular case. Smurf attacks don't exist anymore. So another good example of how we could fixed some of those. Will we find another vulnerability on the network someday with layer 3 and layer 4? Maybe so. Certainly. Of course we will, probably. And if we do, we will find patches for that and correct those problems as well. Let's see. The clarification on remote viewers and packet sniffers, you meant dealing with attackers who are monitoring a target network or are able to trace it back to the attackers. You know, the challenge you have with anything on the internet is it's a pretty darn big place. And knowing the IP address of someone who's attacking you doesn't necessarily, and in fact, many times has nothing to do with the actual attacker. They're hopping through a third party. They're using a botnet. They're just proxying through a third-party process or service. They're going through a server in France, but they're located in the Ukraine. There's all sorts of different things that can happen. So trying to work towards finding the bad guys isn't as simple as finding their IP address or capturing packets from the device. Very often, it's very little can be derived from that. In most cases, you would need a more advanced way to gain access to the attackers. Maybe, and there's been ways that this has happened. Sometimes it's as simple as sending an email to the attacker, if having the attacker, you sort of reverse it on them. You have the attacker visit a site where you are able to tag something on their computer, or you have the attacker read an email from you, which includes information that allows you to track back where that attacker was. And in some cases, this requires you going to that person's location to make that happen. There have been times when here in the United States, the FBI has gone into a coffee shop where the attacker happened to be. They had the attacker turn away from their laptop, and they grabbed the laptop with it turned on and logged in and immediately plugged in their USB drive to image the system. So they were able to get everything from that, all because they happened to be in the right place with the attacker. There have been other situations where these problems have occurred internationally, where we have had to work with other authorities in other countries and bring all of those back to one place, have everybody work together to locate where that particular attacker is in that particular location, and then go after them with what they were doing. There's so much money now in cryptocurrency. People are taking advantage of vulnerabilities of operating systems. There's so much out there that you really have to have a methodical method of tracking down where these people are and where you can locate them, and then a completely different set of logistics on how you deal with them from a law enforcement perspective. It's complex, it's challenging, but we're making strides. We're doing better. But simply capturing the packets or looking at the IP addresses doesn't provide a lot of intel. It provides some. It can help you. It's part of the overall evidence that you're collecting against that attacker, but it, from a single point, from a single data point, doesn't provide us with much, and we can't really do much with that. So unfortunately, it would be nice if you could, right? You could be able to just, oh, I know exactly who that was and why they were attacking me and what they were doing. I want to thank Juliet in the chat room with the $9.99 super chat. Thank you so much for that super chat. This is one where the $9, there's no message. It's just Juliet says, here, we can help you. Oh, here's the message. Juliet says, hello, Professor Messer. I want to say thank you for your study guide for Security Plus. I nailed it last week. You killed that exam. The course notes are there to help you, the study guides and the practice exams. This could be a very valuable tool once you finish watching the videos, once you've read your book, once you've done the labs, the course notes, and of course, you should absolutely go through the practice exams. That's a big book, isn't it? There's a lot of practice exams in there, a lot of questions in there, 3 separate practice exams with tons of performance-based and multiple-choice-based questions. That's what that is. Also want to thank, I think I missed one up earlier. I was, Lewis, thank you for the chat, or for the super chat. $15 super chat too. I should have got to you first, right? Passed my Security Plus 2 weeks ago with a score of 789, a great score. So Lewis says thank you. You're welcome, Lewis or Luis. Thank you so much for the $15 super chat. This is all of these. For those, by the way, I don't promote the super chats necessarily in the chat room. I did turn them on because every little bit helps keep the lights on, helps keeps this whole crazy project going. And so far, it's working out pretty well. So I want to thank everybody for your ongoing support. Even if you can't do a super chat, you're watching the videos on YouTube, you're watching the videos on the website, maybe you've invested in the course notes or the practice exams, all of this helps out. So thank you so much for your ongoing support with that. It really does make a difference. Let's have a look for this. Rick says, I'm being phished. Well, join the club. We're all being phished. If you go through I should probably just go through my Gmail list right now and have a look at all the phishing that happens to be in there. I'm getting emails from rental companies that say they're going to send me to court for stealing their car that I already returned. Well, brings up a good question, and we'll talk about this in a moment. Rick says the email looks legitimate, but also maybe a little bit of phishing going on. Which is it? So I guess my question to you would be, have you rented a car with this company anytime that they're mentioning? You know, is the information in the email accurate? Did you rent a car with this company at this time? And I mention this because over the last couple of years, there have been some pretty high visibility court cases where rental car companies are sending police after people who have returned their cars legitimately. They've got a receipt they returned it. They got video of them checking the car out when they returned it. They can clearly document that they gave the car back to the rental car company, but the rental car company is so messed up internally that they think the car was never returned. You're the last one on the list. They send the cops after you and you get arrested for stealing a car, or you get stopped for something else. You had a taillight out and they find out you have a warrant for car theft, which, by the way, they take very, very seriously. You're immediately in cuffs. You're immediately in the back of a car and you're going to jail. So I would tell you that if this is the case and you really did rent a car from this company and they're telling you you didn't return it, you better address that one right now. That may not actually be phishing. Or is it a double twist where the people doing the phishing know that this is a problem with car companies and they're using that to fish more information from you? Oh, how are you supposed to know? Well, you're supposed to know by actually calling the company directly, not the numbers that are in the phishing email. You call the company with their published telephone numbers and you ask them what's going on, and being able to do that. That's a very good question. And that's one where you can't ignore some of these things that come through. There's plenty of cases. Just search for car rental arrest. You'll find plenty of these examples. There's been one particular company that there was just a huge list of people they sent to the authorities, and suddenly you had tens of people being arrested for car theft, for stealing a car, a felony. And they're getting arrested and sent to jail and having to go through the legal process and spend a lot of money on the legal process, which is why they're turning around and suing the car companies to get some of that money back. Quite a mess that is there. That is one of the reasons whenever I rent a car, I just rented a car on a trip. I take a video of the car all the way around before we even get in. I have all my documentation with me all the time. I get pictures. You know, they always print out the documents for you when you pick up the car. Everybody signs it. I take a picture of the contract so that I have that with me before I even leave the desk. I'm taking pictures. It's like, what are you doing? You got the contract. I got the picture of the contract. Who knows what's going to happen to the contract? And then when I return the car is another video of me going all the way around the car. You can tell I've rented literally hundreds and hundreds of rental cars in my career. I used to travel constantly. I've got 1 million miles on Delta and 1 million miles on everybody else combined, and just lots of time in rental cars and hotels. So I know the problems that can occur. So if you're in that situation, get plenty of documentation. It's not your car. And if you're returning it, you can get a video of you returning it to the person, a video and a picture of the receipt. So at least if this does end up in court, you're still going to get arrested. There's still going to be a warrant for your arrest. You're still going to go to jail for a night. It's going to happen if they do that. But at least now you have the documentation to explain to the authorities and to perhaps use for your own purposes if you happen to go after those companies for the mess that they might have put someone through. Doesn't happen a lot, but something you have to keep in mind. And for those of you sending that in, that's certainly something to worry about. Well, and other people in chat room, we're going to countersue and we're going to sue on the thing with the stuff. You can tell I'm a very, very well read in the world of legal issues. I am not the person to talk to for anything relating to legal situations. Instead, I talk to a lawyer. They're the ones that can help you. They will cost you a lot of money. Oh, it's painful for me to even think about all the money I've sent to lawyers, but they do a great job. I have a lawyer for my company that I can talk to about intellectual property and dealing with things that are just come up every day, day to day in the world of business. You need a good lawyer. So it's another one of those things. It's always nice to have that there. If you have a family lawyer or a group that has some good family lawyers, those are very useful. So I highly recommend not doing this yourself. Never do anything legal yourself. Just trust me. You're wasting time and money. You could have just had all this fixed already. The ideas behind Security Plus and the things you need to know are just enough for this. To finish up the story of the rental car, Rick says, oh yeah, I rented a car and I returned it yesterday. Brother, you need to make some phone calls right now and clear that one up, because it does sound like that might be a legitimate email you got saying that you're stealing their car. There's a whole set of problems there that you're going to have to work through. But that's what I would highly recommend, is getting that fixed now before it becomes something else. Just a mess to worry about those. Not really a security problem as much as it is a legal issue. This often overlaps quite a bit, doesn't it, with the Security Plus? We've seen this on the Security Plus exam objectives, and it comes up all the time when you're working in IT security. There have been many situations, most of them when I was doing work as a systems engineer for a next generation firewall company. I already mentioned it today. I was working for Palo Alto Networks, and I was the systems engineer. I would take the firewall to a customer's site. We would plug the firewall in. Usually it would be on a passive connection or a mirrored connection so that we weren't on a production network, just to watch the traffic go by so we could get an understanding of what type of applications were in use. Is anybody using an application perhaps that the company doesn't want them to use? Is somebody using peer-to-peer software? Is somebody visiting websites that may be deemed inappropriate by the company? And what we found was that everybody had people using peer-to-peer. Every company had people connecting to websites they should not be connecting to. And one of the things that was very powerful about the firewall that we were using is we could see exactly what URLs that people were visiting. We knew what category of URLs were associated with those sites. And so it's sometimes very difficult to be very professional in these meetings where somebody's clearly on a site that is not safe for work at all, to an extreme. Like they're on quite the site. They're on quite the site, and they don't like to read a lot. They really like to more look at pictures. I think you know where I'm going with that. So you're in a meeting with the security professionals, and you're finding that there's somebody on the network who is accessing clearly inappropriate materials while they are at work. What you do at home is your own business, but on a work network, at least here in the United States, don't be doing anything that falls outside the scope of your AUP. That's the important part. Well, immediately in the meeting, we are now in a situation where we are in a meeting with the security team. They are noticing that there's something very bad happening on the network. And in some cases, the very bad thing we're noticing is not just inappropriate. There have been meetings where I've been in where we've identified illegal things on the network. This becomes a completely different meeting at that point. We've now gone past the point of let's see how awesome your firewall is, and it's now turned into a legal issue. And you as a security professional have to think about this. You have to keep this in mind, is that now what do you do? Well, in almost every situation, the security team there's already a well-defined set of steps to occur. Who needs to be informed next? You have to take this to the director or the director of security, or to the CIO at a minimum, and talk about security, or the CSO, and find out who handles things at a high level, and then they will bring in the legal team and determine what the next steps might be. And in the cases where it's somebody doing something inappropriate, they can deal with that by contacting the person, by having a meeting, or by dismissing them from the company. But when it's something that is illegal, it becomes a completely different animal. Now you have a device on their network that has evidence on it, and it now becomes a very different situation. You're having to bring in most cases, it's the FBI, because it's things that deal with federal law, and those things now have to follow that path. To gather even more evidence, and ultimately people get arrested at work. What an awkward situation to be in as a security professional if you're not prepared for it. But this is just the way it works. This is what your job is. Now, the vast majority that probably in the 7 or 8 years I worked at Palo Alto Networks, that probably happened once, where we actually had that person twice for the same thing. And that person, in one case, it was, we visited this company, we're bringing in the firewall. Before we brought in the firewall, we showed up on site with it to do the eval, and the director was no longer with the company. In fact, the director ultimately was in jail. So that was a case where we didn't get involved in the actual process, but the idea of us bringing in this technology and the company looking into this technology led them to this particular situation. But there have been cases where we've connected the next generation firewall, and immediately, it pops up instantly. If you know what you're looking for, it's just a big banner. Like, there it is. There's the thing that somebody shouldn't be doing. And that's something you should be prepared for as a security professional, to know what to do. You don't have to take care of it. You're not the legal team, nor should you be. You should be able to take this information and provide it to people within the organization who know where to go from there. All of this was through a next generation firewall console. This was not DNS requests. This was not packet captures. This was simply plugging in a next generation firewall, getting a copy of all the traffic going out to the internet, and examining what people were doing. And I will tell you, the vast majority of folks are great. They're not causing problems. They're going to normal websites. They're doing the things they need to do to get their job done. We rarely ran into these uncomfortable or weird situations. If it's somebody going to a website they shouldn't be going to, but it's not illegal, then it's something we can kind of laugh about during the meeting. Like, oh, there's somebody doing something there with look, they're going to the site with the big things there on it. You can see it's in the URL that they're, okay, well, we're going to talk to him after we're done here. All right, we're going to keep moving, and we're going to go into this other thing. That it happens. You just have to be professional and talk about, okay, there's people out here that we need to rope in, need a little bit of adjustment. Make sure they don't do that anymore on your network, because that can be a significant problem if it gets bad. Now, there have been sites I have been to, because once you start plugging in a next generation firewall, you see everything. They certainly have the potential to see everything, and in most cases, you do. One of the things that was interesting about using that technology is you kind of got to feel, once you plugged it in the first 5 to 10 minutes, you could get an idea of this company is secure or well secure, or this company is the wild, wild west. And you can get a very quick feel that, oh, there's a lot going on here that's not really appropriate on this network. And you really could figure it out in just a matter of minutes. Now, we had to, of course, step through the entire demonstration and show where you'd find these things, and very slowly start peeling away the onion and pointing towards things that may or may not be appropriate on the network. But as an engineer, we could sort of look at the screen and immediately go, Okay, not much to look at here. We'll focus on other things to deal with. It really was very unique. There were some times when we would plug into a network and it was just pristine. And it was enormous business. It was a huge network, lots of people. And it was remarkable when we ran into that, because that was actually unusual. And we'd walk out of the meeting and say, wow, was that the cleanest network you've ever seen? Whatever they're doing, whatever they're scaring people with is working. We need to find out what it is, what stick they have that they're holding over people, because it works. We go into the next meeting might be the worst network we'd ever seen, or one of, with just inappropriate applications, inappropriate website visits, data and information being exfiltrated, people sticking credit card numbers in an Excel spreadsheet and sending it across the internet. I've seen everything from that perspective. So you really do have to balance that when you're looking at these new technologies, and you have to be ready for it as a security professional, because you will see everything. You just have to know how to handle it. And if you're already ready for it, that's not a problem. But imagine if you didn't know what to do. You didn't know who do you talk to on an issue like this. Now, fortunately, we've got security policies, well-documented processes and procedures, standard operating procedures. We've got tons of documentation we can go to, or we certainly should. But could you imagine if you were a security professional who ran across something illegal, not just inappropriate, but just wrong? And you didn't know what to do? That's a real challenge. That's a real concern. So you should always, as a security professional, already know what those steps are. And if there isn't, for some reason, on your network, you don't have a set of standard operating procedures, you don't have a connection back to your legal team, you don't have a connection back to HR, there's some gaps there that have clearly been missed. So we have to set up those relationships and be ready for it, and have a set of policies and procedures that is well documented. Because if you find something illegal on your network, you better have this very well documented. You better follow the path from one to the other, because if this does go to a court situation, you will be asked, did you do this first? You didn't do that first. It's clearly documented in your processes and procedures. Why did you not follow your processes and procedures? Now there's doubt. And now the person who has done some very bad things, they may not be convicted because of the process you did not follow. Do you see where this problem occurs? It may not be that extreme, but it's certainly a concern and something you have to follow. You have to be very particular about that. Most of the time, it's you tell someone who really can take care of this, and they take it from there. It's really just up to you to do the mechanics. It's up to you, because they're going to come back to you and say, capture everything on this machine. Or in our particular case, give me a copy of every single log that's on the system. Give it to me in text format. Give it to me in the database format. I want the drive out of that computer. I want the drive out of that machine. I want to keep the firewall, whatever it happens to be. And that's what we did. We got the information they needed, or we showed them how to get the information they needed. They were able to collect all of the data, and now you've got the evidence. And then they took it from there. But I've absolutely had customers where I've gone in to a meeting. We've had a big meeting. We've come in weeks later, and that person's in jail, or that person is, they're in jail. That happens. And in the cases of those situations where it's illegal and we have very clear, undeniable, ridiculously amount of evidence that this person did this thing and they should be in jail. That's the way it's supposed to work. And it's ironic that you're the one that sort of starts the process up, but it's not up to you. What's happened has already happened. It's up to you now to make sure that the proper processes occur, and you have to be aware of that. And if you are working in security now and you're not aware of that, now it's time to go back to your employee handbook, your acceptable use policy, your standard operating procedures, and your security policies to figure out what do you do if something like that happens. I bet you know already, though, for those. Rick says, yeah, I returned the car yesterday. I called them. They said it was fine. Is it? You say, but I still get the emails. Well, guess what? That means it's not fine. Somebody at that organization still thinks you have the car. Even if you call them and go, no, well, you better document that you called them. Who did you talk to? Did you document who you talked to? And what did they say? I mean, these are things you've got to have. So you might want to call them again just so you can have documentation on those. No, I called on the 29th at 2:01 p.m. Eastern time. I spoke with Becky Sue, and Becky Sue told me the car was returned and confirmed that for me. And she doesn't know why I'm getting the emails. End of documentation. And then the next step is to ask Becky Sue, I need this moved up to the next level. So whatever we do to move this ticket higher, move the ticket higher. In the chat room, they're even mentioned if you have a cell phone, get an audio recorder. That, of course, is very specific to your particular legality. In not all states or countries are you able to record a phone conversation in that way unless you have approval by both people on the phone call. But that is not something that all states are able to do. I'm in Florida. It's a two-party state, which means that if I want to record audio and video, I have to get approval from the person I'm talking to be able to do that if we are not in a public place. And certainly being on a phone call has an expectation of privacy, so I'm not able to do that. If I drive up to Georgia, I believe Georgia's a one-party state, so I can record the conversation. If I'm in a car in Georgia on the phone, I can record it, but if I step over the state line, I can't. So that's the way laws work. So that's how it happens. And it's not that a place of business does not automatically allow you, that doesn't somehow give you the right to record them. It doesn't work that way. So you have to look at the laws that are in your area. This is one of those cases where you really do need to read through the laws, or perhaps even contact a legal professional to know exactly what you are allowed and not allowed to do. Now, in many cases, and this may or may not be the case, let's say you call and they go, all calls may be monitored for quality assurance purposes. And you may take that as being, oh, well, they're recording me, so I must be okay to record them. Doesn't necessarily work that way either. In a court of law, the defense is going to say, or the prosecutor in that particular case is going to say, did you specifically ask them if it was okay to record that conversation? No, but there was nope, that's it. No more questions. That's it. So those things happen all the time. The legal system is a fantastic system as long as you're not the one in it. That is my philosophy on law. Is it is a fantastic method of justice as long as you're not involved in it in any way, shape, or form. That tends to be my philosophy. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. But I tend to get that perspective from being here on the outside looking in. I just don't want to be any part of it. Not there and interested at all. And that's the scenario. Now, if they're telling you on the phone, even if it's a call center, your call may be recorded for quality assurance purposes. They're able to record you, whether it's a one or two-party state, because they told you we're going to record you. And if you don't like it, you can hang up the phone. That's perfectly reasonable and perfectly legal for them to do. But if you don't specifically, when the person picks up the phone, tell them, hey, my name's James. I'm recording this for or I'm recording this call. I have a question about blah, 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 blah. They can hang up if they want to. They don't have to talk. So it's the same way that it works. Call centers do not have to be in one-party states. Very often are not. There's not a lot of great, there's a lot more people. Call centers are an interesting animal. I used to be a director of data and voice for a call center, for a third-party call center. Those that they would call you when you're just sitting down to dinner. You know, we had big machines in the back that really didn't have technology inside of them. They just ran on evil. And they knew when you were eating, and that's when they would call you. And I'm pretty sure that's how that worked. I never really opened it up and looked inside because I was afraid of the spirits getting out. I just kept it closed, and they would program it from another machine. I was fine with that. But our call centers were all in Florida. There were some in other places, mostly in Florida. Florida is a two-party consent state, but we're able to say, we're recording this for call quality purposes, quality assurance, and that's the way it worked. That's how it worked. And I'm not really sure what happened to that company. I think it's still around in some way, shape, or form. I don't know what they do these days. I've lost track. That was a long time ago when working at a third-party call center. You just feel wrong at some level. Some of the people that we had, though, were really good. We were the call center for DirecTV. We were the call center for College Board, so for your SATs and ACTs. We were the call center for Sprint. So if you were calling American Express, you might have been calling our call center. If you were calling DirecTV, you might have been calling our call center. Because they don't have their own callers. They don't have their own call center. They outsource the call center to a third party that has all of their software and all of they're managed and trained by those companies. So it was people that were dedicated to DirecTV or dedicated to Sprint. So they really knew DirecTV stuff, and they really knew Sprint. They were really good at what they did. There were a set of technical troubleshooting folks there that were really good. But it all happened in that one building, and we were managing 15 different companies' phone calls coming in, sort of the way it works. That's what I would recommend too. You have to be very careful about the legalities around looking at data on the network. It's different in different countries. What you're able to do in the U.S., you're not able to do in other countries, so that's important consideration. And outside the scope of that, things like phone calls and documenting things can be different depending on where you happen to be as well. So another important thing to think about. You get into more legal issues, legal questions, and legal knowledge when you get into the world of security and IT security, just because it overlaps quite a bit. But the real key from a technician perspective, fortunately, what your job is going to be is to let the director and they will take it from there. You don't have to worry about all of those pieces. That's the important part. Well, hopefully that's giving you some insight. I think that covers gets us through that second hour, though. I want to thank you for the questions that you had today. Thank you also for the time in the first hour, the questions we went through. Even though my 50-50 question we didn't go through, maybe we should do more of those. We should do more 50-50 questions. We should have a whole hour of 50-50 sometime and see how well we do. Just shotgun through those. That'd be pretty interesting. Thank you for that. And thank you for your questions here in this second hour. We have such a good time on these live streams. And of course, we have archives of these going back years. You can go back and study for all your SY0-601 and make all of those happen. Thank you, Malk, for making it. You got in there right there at the end. We appreciate you being here too. Thanks everyone for joining us. We've got more of these. Next week are 2 of our A+ study groups. Haven't even written them back. Come on back for that. They're going to be great. I'm guessing. I have to write them. I will write them to be great. We'll make sure that happens. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody.